Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. We've got the whole crew back, so I'm very pleased to be coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand. But Zach, welcome back. We've got our two friends back with us, but how are things in your part of the world?
They're good. Seattle's good. Yeah. There's a concrete strike happening. So there are a lot of...
Concrete strike.
Yes. So there are a lot of stalled projects right now.
Is that
totally unrelated? Totally unrelated to what's going on in Canada and all that
right.
stuff. This is a union strike. Yeah.
Right. But, Mary, how are you?
I'm here in sunny California. Sunny once again.
A little bit too sunny?
A little too sunny. Yeah. Missing the rain, but
yeah.
It's beautiful.
Nice. And Elka, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm here from Philadelphia. And there is nothing really new here happening right now.
We're just cruising into hopefully a good 2022. Well, we've brought us another great interview this week, so we're going to get stuck into that. But before we do, let's thank our sponsors.
Yes, definitely. Everything we do at the Accelerator comes thanks to these fine folks. So our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsors are Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So thanks to our sponsors.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's jump straight into the interview for this week. This is Mary and Ilka having a chat with Clara Ha.
We are happy to talk to you in this episode of the podcast. You are a teacher in the architecture program at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. And that's actually how I heard about you. Hope Hessler is a student of yours, and she happens to be the daughter of Steve Hessler, my Holzmann partner. And she talked about you as one of her favorite and most inspiring teachers of her first year. But besides being a teacher, you're also practicing architecture at ChoShields. But let's start at the beginning. What got you interested in architecture as a career?
I guess it kind of happened organically or naturally. I was always drawing as a kid, like drawing everything everywhere all the time. And then also growing up, I went to a math and science high school as well. So it just kind of seemed, and everyone kind of tells you, architecture is like the marriage between art and science. And you kind of believe that and you like pursue it. And that's kind of how it happened with me. And I would say like, I'm kind of, looking back now, I'm like extremely lucky to have found like to think that I would be interested in something and then to actually be really interested in it and to continue learning it. So it's just, that's how it happened for me.
Yeah, definitely finding a passion in your work since you devote so much time to working is such a wonderful, happy circumstance.
Yes. Yeah.
You got your Bachelor of Architecture from Cooper Union in New York City, and then you went on to pursue a master's in architecture and attend the Danish Academy of Fine Arts. Can you tell us why you made that decision?
Yeah, sure. That also happened in some ways, I guess, again, kind of organically, in that during my studies at Cooper Union, there were a lot of faculty from that school. And also I had a lot of classmates who were exchange students from that school as well. So I was always fascinated by their work and their point of view. And I was always aware of them. And then the timing was right to continue my studies. It was actually at the economic kind of crisis in 2008, 2009. And, just thinking about school and I found out about they were starting a fully English master's program, not an exchange program, but a full master's program from their program that is fully in English. So I thought it was a kind of a great opportunity, and that's kind of how I made my decision.
That's great.
Certainly having it be in English was
Yes. Oh my God, yes. To have that program in Danish would have been impossible for me.
Can you talk a little bit about if they have a particular take on architecture that drew you there?
I would say actually it was quite similar to the pedagogy of my graduate program. Very art based, theory based way of thinking about architecture, and that in some ways that drew me to it because having graduated and feeling overwhelmed, I feel like architecture studies is like a series of overwhelming kind of moments or events. And so much to learn, so much to study. And after having worked for a few years, I think it interests me to think back about what I've learned and relearn them, but really, really learn them maybe, because things that you don't, it doesn't kind of stick to you in undergrad. But I think going to that program allowed me to really understand what it was I was learning that I didn't realize I was learning in undergrad. So it kind of, I think I went there to possibly gain confidence and get kind of understand what kind of architect I am or I want to be in the greater context, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's what drew me. And also I grew up in New York, so that kind of escaped a little bit from hometown. Those are kind of the factors that yeah.
So what was the difference then living in Denmark for you? Was there anything in the way of living there or the building materials or how the buildings were built that really had an impact on you?
The way of living, I mean, things are just much slower in a very good way. I don't know if this has anything to do with it. It probably does, but there's kind of ease and there's no desperation in some sense that you feel in New York, in Copenhagen. I felt personally, because maybe it's the universal health care or that the country does take care of. What I learned is that my Danish classmates were actually getting paid to go to grad school, whereas I was kind of struggling to pay and getting loans and things like that. So there's a freedom, I think, in the way my Danish classmates approached their education and their life that it lacks, I use the word desperation, but that there's kind of ease and I don't know, happiness to it. And which I thought it was quite beautiful. And also what was beautiful to me there was there's very different lighting, just the sunlight in kind of the much northern hemisphere. And also the light, like daylight is much shorter at times and much longer at times. But I felt like I was always enveloped in like natural light wherever I went. Somehow it was like harnessed better within interior space. And when I think back to like the studio space in Copenhagen, just there's always some sort of skylights are just, I don't know, like maybe they're the open, like window openings, or just awareness of how to harness the light within interior space was kind of, to me, pretty striking and wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, going back to basically the cost of education, I mean, I do believe that makes a huge difference. I mean, I went to school in Germany and we didn't have to pay for it either. And just the freedom that you have to just go abroad for a year and just learn different things and see different things, definitely it's pretty impactful in like the way you look at architecture, not without such an urgency. And then the other thing I guess I can relate to growing up in Germany is things being a little bit slower. In Germany, no stores are open on Sundays.
Yes,
so whenever someone came to visit me from the States, that was always the big thing they had to get used to, that you have to go shopping on Saturday because Sunday there's nothing you can do.
Yes, I experienced that too.
Yeah.
But I guess I adjusted my life and it was great. Urgency is a better word than desperation.
And also, I wonder if maybe not, but the natural light, first of all, just having darker winters, maybe there's more of a need to harvest natural light. But also, as I remember Copenhagen, and I haven't been there in a really long time, but the building heights are lower than they are in New York City. So maybe it's a little easier to get natural light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, for sure. There's no high rise, super high, tall skyscrapers for sure. And it's kind of a problem a little bit in Manhattan. Those like pencil towers, they call them, right, off of Central Park. It's creating weird kind of flight patterns for the birds because of the shadows and the impact on the light and the shadows and things like that. So yeah, none of that is kind of a problem in Copenhagen. Sure. Yeah.
And those triple pane windows.
Yes. The tilt and turns.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was a lot of awareness drawn even during the education towards energy efficiency that was already incorporated probably in most of the buildings that you were living in and being taught in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess without realizing it has an impact on the person in it. And, it was like I said, it was kind of dreamlike experience being, enveloped in light in the studio space. It was great. Yeah.
That's great. So did you think that experience just kind of shaped even your approach to education or going on into teaching?
Yes, I think so. I got interested in teaching. I became interested in teaching after, or like during my last year, the second year of my study in Copenhagen. And I think it's as I mentioned, the pedagogy is similar, but the way of teaching is a little different. And I guess maybe there was a realization that I could teach what I learned, which I think is important, but not in the same way that I was taught. I think Cooper Union is a wonderful place, and I had amazing teachers and amazing experience, and I gained a lot of knowledge, but there was kind of a very specific way of teaching that sometimes it was either wrong, you could be wrong about some aspects of architecture, like, kind of formal or theoretic, but you could be wrong about something, and there's a right way and the wrong way, which I don't necessarily, in teaching first year, because it's kind of something more abstract, I don't necessarily believe that. Or maybe I believe it, but it doesn't have to be taught in such a dogmatic way. And I think the kind of the freeing, kind of respectful way of teaching kind of similar ideas at Copenhagen was something that was, I guess it impacted me in the way when I came back, and in the way I thought about teaching as something that I could do or that I'm interested in, and how I approach architecture and how I communicate it with students.
Obviously, you're doing it very well, since I only heard really good things from you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it really depends on the students too, but yeah, I mean, I hope it was great.
And so you teach mostly first-year students, and I'm curious, and you've been teaching for
11 years. Yeah.
11 years?
Mm-hmm.
And Have you seen an increase at all in students' interest in sustainability? And are you integrating that focus into your curriculum at all, or is that just not really that appropriate at the level that you're teaching?
There is an interest in the student body to learn more about sustainable structures and architecture, and I mean, it is really their future. That and they are the future, and it's their future, right? So there's definitely increase, and kind of whether how detailed knowledge they might have of sustainable architecture or not, but I think just the idea of that as an important way of thinking is already embedded when they come into first year undergraduate studies. So there's a much increase in kind of awareness, and hence there's a demand for that kind of education. But I would say for first year curriculum, it's a little bit, I haven't had the opportunity to introduce any sustainable architecture kind of concepts and there might be opportunities, something that I'm kind of thinking about. But first year is so much about, I feel like it's a lot about unlearning their kind of preconceived notion of what's a building and what architecture looks like a building, and also kind of learning to look at things like almost for the first time and being critical in that way. Like, why is this built this way? Why does my world look the way it does? And, so kind of through that unlearning process, there's a lot to unlearn and learn and teach and learn. And I'm not yet sure how kind of the specifics of, either passive house or sustainable kind of design components could make its way into that curriculum. But that's how it currently is. But I know as a student, as an institution, I know Pratt is getting more involved and more kind of investing in, even just specifically passive house design. So they're kind of meeting the demand of the student body.
And they actually set up a class, right, for fifth year, you said?
Yes, it's a seminar. Yeah, they've always had kind of the sustainable architecture, kind of more a broad kind of seminar class. They've always had that, but this year they implemented a specific passive house design seminar. And it's an elective offer for upperclassmen. So it's, there's maybe, 10 to 12 students for upper class, fourth or fifth year students who are taking that class. And I understand that class filled up quite quickly. So it is definitely shown that it is high in demand and people are interested. Students want to learn and get involved.
So, and you've been also practicing architecture as well as teaching. And a year ago, you joined the firm of ChoShields. So what made you switch to that firm and what are you doing there?
Yes, I am, I guess they call me an associate here, but I'm a project manager at ChoShields Studio. And it is a passive house certified studio. Actually, I oversee basically all the projects that go through the studio, but we have projects in various scales and, budgets, I guess. But we do strive for every project to be passive house, standards. I've known the two principals in Cho and Tim Shields for 14, 15 years, even before I joined them. I did work with them as a junior architect, maybe a little over a year. And we've always, just before me going off to grad school, and we've always kept in touch. And I follow their career and I follow the growth of the studio and kind of the mission. And, it seemed more and more relevant. They were kind of going towards relevance and being kind of bigger than just being an architecture firm, like greater than that. And that is something, I would say that I'm, that my practice or teaching is something I think I enjoy the importance and the relevance of it because it is bigger than myself, right? It's greater than just my interest. And so I think it kind of, and they were also looking for someone and it just kind of, everything happened like, just kind of, everything gelled together. And that's why I joined. And I think, the more I, think about, the word relevance and, like what it means to be kind of responsible and relevant for what's happening in, currently, I not just in the world, but for myself. I think teaching offered me the opportunity to be have a bigger impact than just my little ecosystem, and that it's hopefully my teaching, is kind of carried on, and those thoughts are carried on, and ChoShields Studio has that kind of approach to architecture as well. We're not just building passive house, we're also educating passive house. So like all those kind of and also getting involved in kind of policy level as well, so that all seems to kind of gel with my interest and my desire to be part of something that's more than me and more than just architecture and more than just building, but just the world in some ways. So it kind of that's how I kind of joined them, and that's how also I wish to be here.
So does all of this relate back to the work that you were doing before you joined, like in terms of type of projects and things that you saw, were happy or frustrated with?
Actually, yeah. I was not really involved in sustainable design or passive house design prior to joining ChoShields Studio. So in some ways, I'm a student. I'm a student of this passive house design. Previously, I worked for a firm here in New York City, and I was there for a long time, 9 years. And I was a project manager as well, but we were doing most landmarked preservation projects, which is it's a very important kind of component in New York City. More and more areas are being landmarked, more and more buildings are landmarked. So in New York City, to get anything built, there's some component of landmark preservation's involvement in your project. And also preserving, history of architecture is important too, So there, I found kind of interest there, but New York City Building Code exempts landmark structures from meeting the energy code. So given that there is it's a dense urban setting, and most projects have some components of existing structure. It just seemed, I guess, there was a slight frustration on my part of like, why, these buildings are underperforming, but there's nothing we are doing about it. I guess, right? There was a slight frustration, before I joined ChoShields.
Yeah. I've actually worked on several historic tax credit projects, and it's kind of frustrating because it basically goes against energy efficiency, because what they require is to really, if there's a brick, I've worked on brick factories. So historic tax credit requires to leave the brick exposed from both sides. So there's no room for insulation, and which of course makes the building very energy inefficient, but also not very comfortable for the occupants. We built them into apartments. And also they do have issues with condensation and mold. So it's kind of interesting that one thing really works against the other.
But all the topics that Passive House really addresses very well: comfort and condensation, mold. So you're relatively new to Passive House. How do you integrate Passive House into your workflow at ChoShields now?
It's always a work in progress. I feel like, and it has been difficult for me, as you mentioned. I am relatively new to this, integrating that into a project, and there are kind of projects at different stages when I entered, and there were and I think I learned a bit from the different phases, and I think I would say our most successful workflow is a new building in Brooklyn where knowing that I guess the design PH is done in SketchUp, and we want to make sure we integrate the principles of Passive House or details of the understanding of Passive House as early as possible in a project. We designed most of up to beginning of DD. We designed the building in SketchUp, right? So in terms of getting the information, the data that we need to make sure our project is certified, it was quite an easy transition and an early transition. And once that design phase was kind of, we were in a good spot, like checking all the passive house data as well as clients' needs and all those kind of parameters. Then we moved on to kind of Revit and kind of more detailed oriented like construction, like drawing sets, right? But I think for me, the integrating for us here, that project I think was kind of the smoothest transition or smoothest way to integrate design page into a project. So I think it's worked well so far. So because we always have that data early on.
And do you have someone in-house who does all the energy modeling, or do you have to work with someone who then has to make space in the schedule?
I think one of the advantages of being here too is that yes, we do have someone who with in-house who helps us with everything passive house, and she because she's in-house, we're able to test those out very quickly and make decisions very quickly, and it works really well with the workflow. And we're very fortunate that we are able to have that done in-house.
Yeah. So are there other things that you're thinking about with this building that might not be directly passive house related, but relates to resiliency of the buildings?
Yes. We actually we wanted to make sure this building was we're thinking about embodied carbon, but also we want to make sure that the building is light on land and kind of also as little excavation as possible. But also we wanted to make sure this building was elevated off the grade more than it's required to be per code. It is not in this FEMA flood zone, so we're not really required for this building to be elevated at a certain level. But kind of looking into future, we decided that. And for the client who wants to stay there for a long time, that we decided to elevate the entire structure. There's no basement in this project. The first floor happens about 3 feet above grade. And I think that, again, allows us to excavate less and it's light on the land and less concrete, also saves our client a little money. And so I think that component we're actually we think it was a really good decision to kind of have early and have the client understand early on that as an important aspect of this project.
Yeah. Do you have a specific location for your systems that you thought about relating to flood zone?
You mean the datum, flood zone datum, or
like
mechanical? Did you mean mechanical systems?
Mechanical systems? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. They're all interior in a condition. They're located within kind of the core area. All within the condition space and and above any level.
I just had heard that New Yorkers are moving towards putting their mechanical systems on the top floor, even the roof, a lot of times now.
Yes, we definitely have that too. It's a 2-family housing. It's a 3-story building, but it's a duplex on the lower floor and then simplex on the top floor. And so the mechanical, the ERVs for the second floor, I think they are definitely on the roof and within the conditioned bulkhead.
Yeah.
And does not having a basement, how do you insulate the foundation?
Yes.
Then?
Yeah, it's a lot of insulation, but we are basically it's sitting on like these strap beams and then posts and then grade beam. It's kind of many layers of like small concrete members, I guess. And we're kind of trying to insulate like all around the piers and like underneath the slab, and it's kind of like wrapped all around with I think 4-inch insulation to make sure. it's a bit of it's a continuing. We have to really think about this 3-dimensionally, and it has to be modeled because it's not just foundation walls, right? It's kind of all these components. So like how are we really continuously insulating underneath is something that we kind of look at 3D and make sure it is achievable.
The same with air sealing, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And in your office, I mean, sounds like going to be a new construction building, but you guys also work on retrofits quite often, right?
Yes, we do. We do have, we have a range. We do have clients who come in and say, oh, it's just an apartment renovation. We want to combine this we bought a next door unit and we want to combine it with our unit. So it's completely within, it's an interior renovation. But we also have projects where it's like full gut and addition, like rooftop addition or rear addition, things like that. So we do have retrofit, and those are, from my short experience that I am here, I have been here, it seems much more challenging to first to get it at the efficiency level that we want. And I know there's kind of different levels of certification that we could look at, and also a lot of the renovation projects somehow that are currently going on. Yes, we're definitely way above New York City building code level of efficiency. We definitely we make sure that's included in all our projects, but sometimes it's we find it difficult to sometimes convince the clients, maybe, and the budget is always an issue. So we have particularly one project where we had this much bigger scope with like a huge addition, almost a new construction, because we were demolishing a lot of the existing structure, and we were, kind of detailing everything to be at a passive house level, and then kind of, like reality kind of kicked in, and the budget kicked in, and the scope kind of shrank a lot, and we're trying to kind of coordinate with the client how much, we could kind of save, and it kind of became it's a difficult project that we're hoping to possibly have, I guess, EnerFit certified, but it's kind of getting less likely. We'll see. We're trying to make sure all our projects are as efficient as possible.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's great.
So you made yourself a name to be a passive house architect. So do most of the clients come to your office with the knowledge, and also with the desire, the wish to build something close to passive house? And then if reality kicks in, are they willing to then reduce the scope rather than sacrifice energy performance?
Yes. So I think more recently, through In and Tim's kind of work, well before I joined, I think we have a lot of clients who do come to us, who just kind of find us on the internet and doing research about passive house, and in Brooklyn, and they come to us saying that they want to build a passive house with us. And the project that I had mentioned earlier, the Brooklyn project, the new build, she also is a client who found us through researching passive house on the internet. So we do get a few clients who approach us with very specific vision for a very energy efficient building or for their home. We usually, build in our proposal that our projects will be designed at this level, and it's, well, for those clients, it's important. The energy efficiency is important, so it's not really that much of a problem, I would say. And if there has to be a reduction in scope, we either it's kind of a different reduction that we don't want to change the performance of the building. So that's not much of an issue, but we do also have clients who are very old clients who's been coming to ChoShields for a very long time, who are not necessarily aware of or quote unquote interested in passive house design, and I feel we try to educate them, not in a kind of assertive way, but just kind of insert ourselves in a very respectfully to let them know that this is in the end you get a better, it'll just be better.
Well, it's encouraging to know that people are finding you specifically about passive house. I mean, it's really testament to how much attention, especially in New York, I feel there's, it's not like it's completely pervasive, but there is growing awareness of passive house as a concept anyway.
Yeah,
definitely. And I feel like even if passive house certification gets value engineered out, I mean, just the fact that you know how to build it and then you have been building that way, even if it approaches more code level, maybe code level installation levels, you still are going to build airtight, right? Yep. So it's still a different building when people come to you, because you have that knowledge.
Yes. And also I think, we are, as I mentioned, we as a studio and InCho has been involved in the policy level of writing the energy code in New York City. Like our goal is to hopefully continue to be involved and try to guide the energy code to be more towards the levels, of passive house certification.
Yeah. And have you in your career experienced gender issues or ethnicity issues? Have they affected your career at all?
I don't, not sure. I would say, I'm not sure if it affected me in my kind of career path. But maybe, being a woman, typically, when you go to a job site, there's not a lot of women at job sites in a construction site. So, it's pretty typical that I would be the only woman, or, I'm surrounded by all men. And it's a pretty typical situation. So it's not very jarring, or it doesn't affect me that much, but I do kind of maybe, and this is completely personal to me. It might be my personality or just my, just the way I am, but I feel the need to be a little bit more vocal about the knowledge that I have, and kind of outwardly about it. And I don't necessarily think I need to do that, but it's just kind of the effect that being surrounded by just all men might have on me. And so, but I think that usually just happens, first couple of meetings, but after that, and that's okay. It's, I have the knowledge, and I should be there. So it's fine, and in terms of gender, I would say though, it's kind of what I've noticed, not that it affected my career path again, but that there are more women studying architecture from my experience, from the 10, 11 years that I've been teaching, that there's more women students. And I find that empowering. I do. And more kind of, even in academic, like teaching roles, more women too. And I think I find that very optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think it's so important to have women in these educational roles. Do you talk to your students, to your female students, about how it is to be on the construction site though? Being one of the very few women right now. Hopefully that will change with more women studying architecture, but right now that's still a fact, right?
Yeah, it is. I do. I guess I do mention it in kind of, because I do have active job site that I do go to, and I'll be like, oh, I'm just at a job site, and then, but I say it. Hopefully, I'm kind of empowering them a little bit to say, like, I love it, that now, it's they might look at me, like, does she know what she's talking about? But I do, and it's great to prove them wrong. Or, like I kind of maybe blow it up a little bit to have them feel like they, of course we should be there, and we must be there, right? So, I in my teaching, there's a lot of new technology out there, even model making technology, 3D printing and, laser cutting. But I encourage all my students to hand make everything. I'm in just like the tactile, experience and the relationship with your project, right? So I tell them to go to the wood shop, use the tools, use the power tools, and use, table saw, bandsaw, all that stuff. And I told them somehow, it's empower. I don't know, maybe it's a cultural thing, and it's also it's personal, but I felt very empowered when I was in undergrad, and I would just go to the shop, and all the shop people, the wood shop people, they were all men, of course, but I would just go in there. I knew the tools, and I would just use the table saw, I would use the bandsaw, and I found it very empowering. And so I tell my students to don't be scared of the wood shop, and especially my women students, don't be scared. Just go there and just make stuff, and it's a similar environment in that way. It's more in that construction kind of making side, it's more men. And I kind of want them to feel very comfortable in that setting. Yeah.
How did you get familiarity with power tools growing up in New York City? I mean, it's just that in New York City, most people don't have room to have a wood shop in their home.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, that's true. It's true. I didn't really, growing up, not really. I mean, maybe a hand drill and things like that. But the Cooper Union had amazing wood shop. And, as soon as I entered, it was like a full floor of like metal, wood, just everything. And as soon as I entered, of course I was intimidated, but, like I said, later, as I was like, yeah, I can do this by myself, and I know exactly how to do this. And, it was a really, I loved that experience, and I want to teach that experience to my students.
Great.
In Philadelphia, we actually have these wood shop co-ops, basically, where you sign up and you have a membership, and you can just go in and use all the tools. And they offer classes too. And I actually just signed up my 13-year-old daughter for a class to learn about or learn to use all the big tools. And she's really, really excited. She's been loving woodwork at her school. She goes to the Waldorf school, but it's mostly by hand. So now she's learning how to use the big power tools. And I actually want to sign up my other two daughters too, because I feel like, it's just so great, because that's not typically an experience that you get early on. And I feel like, especially as a woman, you have to, going into like a male dominated world, you have to start up with almost more knowledge to be more confident and just kind of entering that world. So I'm excited for my daughter.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm excited for her too. Yeah, it's great.
Well, it's been great talking with you. Really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
And that was Clara Harder. Thank you very much, Ilka and Mary, as always. Let's start with you, Ilka. What were your big outtakes from that chat?
Well, I really liked how she described being abroad and having the experience of basically stepping out of what she had been doing so far and just gaining a different perspective, and being able to take that back and into her way of educating young students. So it was really great to hear about that.
Yeah, it's incredible having that international experience, which I think you mentioned you can relate to that as well, having trained in Germany and the I guess people are encouraged to travel and go and see how things are done elsewhere, which I think is really valuable. I know that German builders are they have their traveling tradesperson and master builder go and travel around, which I think is just awesome, which we could learn a lot from.
Yeah.
Mary, what about you?
Well, I really liked hearing about her transitioning to working in a passive house firm practice and, a little bit about her frustrations with her previous place where she worked on landmark projects, mostly where energy efficiency was pretty much not allowed to be addressed, and the frustrations and her excitement about working on Passive House now, where she can bring that into her designs. And, it's an exciting project she's doing there and she's working on now for them in Brooklyn. And just the process of incorporating design PH into her work. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting challenge. So you're talking about the brick needing to be exposed on both the outside and the inside and not having anywhere to put insulation in that context because of the heritage value. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of older buildings, is the value that we place on heritage just because something's old. And I don't want to detract from the beauty, because a lot of old things are beautiful, but just because something's old doesn't necessarily mean it's good in every sense. So yeah, it's a tough one, because I can also appreciate that we don't want to just throw out everything and start from scratch again. Not least because of the embodied carbon involved in that, but also because of the beauty of some of our older buildings. We could probably delve into that, because it's a whole nother topic. But your other point there about design pH, I picked up on a comment she made about some of their projects possibly missing passive house just by a little bit. But that made me think, and she made this point, that a building that aims for passive house at the early stage and then misses it slightly is probably way better than a building that starts out at code and then aims for slightly higher than code. So I think that's a really good mentality to aim for passive house regardless. And then even if it doesn't quite hit the mark, it's still a really, really good building. Zach, anything jump out for you?
Yeah, actually, a couple of things. And the first related to what you were just alluding to is that she was talking about the process of basically coaxing along clients toward passive house, and the frustrations around that a little bit, which are frustrations I think that probably every passive house practitioner can relate to. But the other piece was that she's also part of a firm, and I think this is something that she probably really values, that is involved in policy advocacy, so that so there's this two-pronged approach. There's one of kind of persuasion and patience and perseverance with clients, and then there's the other piece where the rules need to be better. It needs to, some of this really should just be should be code. So it was good to hear about that and how that connects with her desire to make a bigger impact as broader than being an architect. And it also makes me reflect on what it seems like a really great fit with to be working within Cho, because in is also an educator and it does all, probably a lot of listeners have seen her work with kids, for example, doing art installations around passive house to teach passive house, or even interpretive dance with a high school group, and some really cool things that we've been able to see at different conferences and stuff that in has shared. So that I like, I think architects can make such a big impact on making the world a better place through practice. And it also, it's great to recognize that all of us also have other ways that we can help try to move the needle.
Yeah, education certainly plays a big part in Clara's work. She's spent such a long time as an educator, so it's a good crossover there. But also having experience in practice. Ilka, Mary, I'm not sure how you first came across Clara. How did you meet her or find her in the first place?
Well, I heard about her actually through education. So my Holzmann partner, Steve Hessler's daughter, she studies architecture at Pratt, and Clara was her favorite teacher.
Nice.
And she was very, very inspired by her. And I thought that was just such a great story to actually hear from one of her students about her. And it just kind of shows how important the educator is, right? How the educator really has the power to inspire the next generation and basically help them find their purpose, right, in their education. So I think that's really important, and it really showed that she is a great teacher.
Absolutely. And I was really struck by two things she said right at the start. One is that architecture is this beautiful union between science and art. And also, it was a little bit sad, but also I'm really glad that Clara is aware of the fact that with her first year students, she has to teach them almost to unlearn some stuff before they can learn some stuff. And it's sad because it kind of makes me think, well, what do people have to unlearn? How have we gone wrong with pigeonholing people or training them in such a way that they're not sort of open to ideas that they need to be open to. But great that there are people like Clara who are aware of that and take that approach of saying, forget about what you think about buildings, because this is where we start your real learning. So yeah, really, really fascinating stuff. And I agree. I think it's so fascinating. It's so inspiring to have people like that do literally change people's lives.
Right, and foster the developing their own voice in architecture. I thought that was, I mean, she clearly was trying to ease off on the experience that a lot of students have, where there's a right and a wrong. And, and that isn't true when you're combining art and science, Of course, there are some principles we always want people to learn about, but not necessarily a right and a wrong.
Yeah, no, I think you've summed up what I was trying to say there much more eloquently, Mary, that a lot of high school is about learning, what the right answer is or how to pass an exam. And then you get to university or college and realize that, there's a part of that as well for assessment purposes, but and you need to know how to do maths properly so that the building stays up. But there's an infinite ways of designing a building. So you've got to have that creativity as well as the science.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that she basically said that this approach she learned from being in Denmark, right? That the teaching there and just being in school was a lot more relaxed, and that she basically took that back with her and is teaching that way now. Yeah.
Which I think, Zach, reminds me again of the value of things like the accelerator, because it is global, and even simple things like building a building without a basement, which is pretty standard practice in Australia and New Zealand. It can be very easy to be quite insular in the way you do things in a local area, or to spend time reinventing the wheel when it's so easy these days to jump on a call or watch a webinar from someone who is on the other side of the world, who's got some great experience that could be really transferable to anywhere. And that's the strength of not just Passive House, but certainly the Passive House Accelerator.
Well, yeah, we have so much to learn from one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great having international people like Clara who I'd love to know how many languages Clara speaks. I'm not sure if you know that, Ilka.
Well, she said she does not speak Danish.
Right.
That she was lucky that the whole program was new and being taught in English. So otherwise it would have been a little more challenging for her. But I don't know how many languages she actually speaks.
Yeah.
I appreciate it because I grew up in New York City also, that she grew up in New York City and yet had the experience to get confident with power tools when she was in college, because it's not an experience that is easy for people who grow up in New York City, where there isn't room to have a workshop in most people's lives. And And that she's trying to teach that to her students. I really appreciated that.
That was going to be my final point, actually. I really love that idea. It kind of makes me want to go out and play with some wood. And I'm very grateful of having that experience with my dad. We had a garage and he had tools, and I had a lathe when I was in high school, and just loved doing stuff with wood. And I think that's so valuable these days, particularly when so much time is spent, professional time, not just entertainment time, in front of screens and in a 2D world, that going out and picking up a window frame or looking at timber and how it actually works, working with wood is good fun, but it's also really important from a professional understanding and just understanding of materials. Awesome. All right. Any final comments before we wrap this one up?
Well, I also found it interesting that that her students are starting to get more vocal about being interested in sustainability. And I think that's great. And that although she teaches the first year students, her boss in Cho teaches seminar for fourth and fifth year students on Passive House specifically, and that it filled out right away. That was great to hear.
Awesome. Yeah. We need those kids to keep us adults accountable. Very good. All right. Always inspiring, Mary and Ilka. Thank you once again for bringing us another great guest and spending time with them. Really, really great stuff. I look forward to getting you back on a regular basis, as we do at least try and do once a month. All right. What have we got going on in Passive House world, Zach?
Well, this coming week, the first news comes from Sydney, Australia, where Icebox Challenge Sydney will launch on the 21st of February, which is Monday. So that'll run from Monday the 21st through to March 4th. So we're going to see, we're on pins and needles to find out if the Passive House box or the conventional code box will be better at protecting the ice. So stay tuned for more. This is a really cool public science experiment that teaches about how powerful envelope is in energy performance in buildings. So it's fun to see that it's going to be in Sydney.
But also,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have to put a bit of a plug in there to check out some of the images coming out of Passive House Australia, or the Australian Passive House Association, because there's some cool designs. It's not just a wooden box that I've seen before for previous Icebox challenges. So they're all over social media, so check it out.
Oh, nice. I haven't looked at them. I will. So then on Wednesday, so in North America, it's Wednesday, February 23rd. For you in Australia and New Zealand, it will be Thursday, February 24th. We have Passive House Accelerator Live. And because it is the fourth Wednesday of the month, it's going to be a construction tech edition. And this is going to feature Sean St. Amour, who is one of the co-hosts of Construction Tech. And he will be speaking about how to not put a pin in it. So eliminating pinholes in airtightness. This is the final installment of our programming around airtightness for the month of February, and we hope you'll join us. And then the next day, so it'll be Thursday, February 24th for folks in the UK and Ireland and North America, and ridiculously early on Friday, February 25th for you in Australia and New Zealand. We'll have episode 5 of the Building Performance Interactive. So please join us for that. It'll be at 2 p.m. GMT, which is 9 a.m. Eastern and 6 a.m. Pacific. So that's it for me.
Awesome. And as always, check out the Passive House Accelerator. Lots of great resources there. And if you haven't already, sign up to the newsletter so you get all those notices and upcoming events in your inbox. All right. I think that just about does it for this week. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Ilka and Mary. And we look forward to having you all back on the show sometime soon. And we'll be back again next week with another episode of Passive House Podcast.